Today I'm going to show you the Pentax K-01. K-01 is a mirrorless camera. However, it uses the standard K-mount. That means you can attach lenses from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago to this camera very easily. You don't need an adapter except for the M42 screw mount lenses. And that's the same with all of the other Pentax cameras. So, like I said, you can attach standard K-mount lenses to this. The camera itself has a 16 megapixel sensor. It's got the shake reduction, pretty much all of the standard features of current Pentax DSLRs. However, it is mirrorless, it does not have an optical viewfinder, and it does not have an electronic viewfinder. What it does have is the 3-inch LCD screen that is very similar to the one on the K5 and K7 for framing. Works pretty well. I can get into that later. You can see the camera itself is very unique looking. As most people say, it's box-like. This specific camera that I have here was originally yellow. It had the yellow grip materials, but I replaced that. The designer of this camera, Marc Newson, I don't really agree with some of his choices, but I was able to get a yellow camera with the lens for a good price. This was actually a demo unit, and it worked out for me. I was able to switch the grip, and these lugs here are actually silver on the black camera, but I have black ones here. Just a little change that I did. The camera itself ergonomically is usable. However, I believe he made some decisions that aren't necessarily good for ergonomics. You can get into that a little bit later. Go back to the stats on the camera. Like I said, 16 megapixels. It's got shake reduction, pretty standard feature for Pentax DSLRs. The camera itself can shoot RAW frames at 1 frame a second and JPEGs at 6 frames a second. You've got contrast detection autofocus, so it's not as fast as a standard Pentax DSLR. It's not terrible, however there are some quirks I'll talk about a little bit later. You've got one really great feature for this camera. It's almost a reason just to buy it if you have lots of old manual focus lenses. It's called peaking. So how it works is that you see, let me switch this into manual, you will see white lines as the focal point changes. When you change focus, you'll see that white outline shift, which is a really amazing feature. So like I said, I would almost just buy that if I were really into manual focus lenses, that I had a lot of different K-mount or M42 screw mount lenses. I'd consider one of these cameras just for that peaking feature. It is that good. It's very fast to focus and very accurate. But besides that, with autofocus, it's contrast detection, you've got face detection, you've got a focal point that tracks subjects, works relatively well. You've got center point, and then the one that I use primarily is selectable point autofocus. That works a little better than center point for me. Has a larger point area, seems to work better. Pentax did a pretty good job at improving the video capabilities of this camera compared to the K5. This one uses MPEG-4 compression, so the files themselves are smaller. I haven't really noticed too much of a difference with quality so far, but I'm just starting to do video work with this K-01, and it looks decent. The settings wise, you've got 1080p, 30 frames a second, 25 frames a second, and 24. And then for 720p, you've got all the way up to 60 frames a second. You've got 50, and then down the line, it's very nice, large set of abilities with video. It has a mic port, which is a very handy feature for video on a budget. So you can connect an external microphone to that, and they have levels control for that mic port. However, the negative is that the camera does not currently show you the levels when you're recording. That's kind of a unusual admission, but it doesn't do that. And you can also use the peaking focus feature before you start recording video, but you cannot use it while you're recording video. So hopefully, I don't know if they will, but maybe they'll eventually improve that in a firmware update. Like I said, video is pretty strong on this camera, and it's definitely an improvement over the K5. It has full manual control. You can change the shutter speed, ISO, aperture, in video mode. You still got exposure compensation and exposure lock that works in video. That's one of the primary reasons I bought this camera over another K5, is because I wanted enhanced video control, and this is about as good as it'll get right now for Pentax. And I wanted to use my old lenses. You know, this is the K-01. Seems like the best bet at the current moment for video with K-mount lenses. Before I go into close-up details of the ergonomics with this camera, I'll just do a general overview. It's designed by Marc Newson. He is not a camera designer, and you can tell. There are some quirks to the camera, which I'll go over now. Up top, button placement is relatively decent. However, the green button is in a very bad position. I guess he was looking for symmetry or something, but as a photographer, having the green button all the way over here is not useful to me. I can't press it with my right-handed finger. It just doesn't work. You need to use your second hand to get to that green button. Let's say, for example, you hold down the exposure compensation button. You're not going to be able to press that green button to reset it. You have to use your other hand and press that green button. The other thing I do is I use this second hand and I do it like that with two fingers. It doesn't work. That's a bad design. I think he was doing form over function in that case. It doesn't work. It just makes our lives more difficult for trying to make it look nice. You got this large dial on top. If you're holding the camera standard, you can't really access it. However, if you shift your hand upwards, you can get it. You can still grip the camera like that. It's sort of functional. It does work, but it's slightly risky if you're just holding it with one hand. Generally, you'll have the strap attached to the camera. You got a nice click to it. That works relatively well. I like the shutter release and I like the on-off switch. It's quick, it's nice, solid aluminum buttons. It's nice, I like that. I also like the dial on the back. It's a little loud, however, it's nice. It's quick, it works. The red button here is for video. I'll just mention a quick quirk to that mode is that this red button, which controls video, does not use the mode you're in. It uses program mode for video. That doesn't make sense to me. So if I want to get into video mode quick, I'm forced to use standard program mode for that video I'm recording. It doesn't make sense. Why they did that, I don't know. I think that video button should use whatever mode I have my movies set to, but it doesn't. They've got the exposure compensation button. That's relatively decent as well with placement. In the back here, all these buttons are laid out pretty good. They work. And then up the top you've got a flash button, Let me show you the flash itself. I don't personally use flash too much, but it doesn't go up too high. However, it's nice. It works. It's discreet. Not too bad. Of course, you got the standard flash port for that. All the Pentax, you got the 180th per second maximum flash speed, and you've got the high speed sync, of course. Mic port on the side. Nice feature. Good placement. Now you see this on the camera here. I have a 40mm f2.8 XS. Marc had designed this lens. I think he did a nice job on it. It's smaller than the original. It doesn't have quick shift, but they did that because it's cheaper. The focus travels decent, and it's pretty nice. I used to own the original 40 2.8, but I sold that. This is a nice cheap replacement for that lens. I like it. So let me put on a larger lens here, show you what it's like with that. You just see this is really thin. So here's the 31 1.8. See here? Very nice handling once you put on a standard lens. It still works with one hand. I mean, of course, some of the buttons are not one-handed. A bit able, but when you have a larger lens on this camera, that gives you some extra room to put your second hand. It works very nicely like that. So with the 31, it's probably one of the best fitting lenses for this camera. It's got a nice focal length. It fits nicely in the hands. You generally have the standard strap. That means you'll have more ability to get to these difficult buttons with the other hand. And then when you're framing, you've got that nice grip there with the larger lens. I'm going to put on an even larger. Here is the 85mm f1.4. So at this point we're adding quite a bit of weight to the camera. It's still usable in one hand. You can still get to the shutter release. Works. You've got even more room to put your other hand when you're framing. I think it works relatively well with large lenses up to a point. When you use extremely large telephoto lenses, it's really not designed for that. This is a good street, type of street camera. So you're generally not use extremely large lenses with this camera. It doesn't have the standard viewfinder and all that. Just got the LCD. If you're using a super telephoto lens, it might be kind of difficult to frame with it. But if you've got the 85 and below, things like that, I think it works pretty well. So let me just give you a nice spin on these different lenses. In this case, I don't think an extremely small camera would have helped the situation. I think that it fits nicely with larger lenses. Here's a quick size comparison of Pentax K7 and the K-01. See, there is some difference, It's got a lot of the K5 inside, but it's still quite a bit smaller. I think that it's not a significant difference, but it's just enough that it makes this worthwhile. you know, you've got that extra height there. And when I personally use two cameras quite a bit, and if I want to fit two cameras in one bag, having the K-01 is definitely helpful over having two K5s or a K7 and K5, because it is smaller. It is slightly thinner. Overall, not too bad. Here's K-01 in close-up detail. See a nice aluminum top here, the Pentax logo. Let's move over. Got the switch, main dial here. Nice click to it. This is a metal. Here you've got the autofocus assist light and the K-01 logo. Got the on-off button, shutter, release. Red button for video, exposure compensation. Main dial and the green button. Side here, got the button for the flash. Here's the flash. Articulating, locks down. Let's go to the back. One nice positive of the K-01 is that the live view updates very fast. It's really quick, much better than the K5, K7. I think it's 60 frames a second update capacity to it. Very quick, I like it. So that's enough jiggling it around. Over inside here, you got the AF, AL button, play button, info button, menu button. Pretty standard stuff. And the main control for the menu, as well as the dual functionality ISO. Is one for flash, white balance, and then one to control drive modes as well as timer modes. Let's go into menu. Pretty standard layout to it. Very similar to other Pentax DSLRs. Nice functionality to it. Pretty simple. This K1 has quite a bit less control than the K5, but it's definitely fully enabled with lots of nice features and control levels. You can change, like I said, you can change the green button and the red button control. Let's go into that. See button customization. So the green button, you can change it to different things. Let's go back. Same thing with the red button. Same thing with AF, AL in video and not in video. So that's kind of nice. Pretty nice menu. Let's go on the side here. The rubber flap. Got the PC, HDMI port. A current negative of this HDMI port, it does not work with video out or live view. It really doesn't make sense to me why they would do that. It only works for image review. Hopefully they'll fix that in the future, but who knows? They might not. It's up to them, I guess. So here is the area for the SD card. Very easy to use. That's pretty much an improvement over how the K5, it's a little hard to pull out. This is very easy to access. Just locks down. Then you put this rubber flap back on. Go to the other side. Mic port, Nice feature, especially for people without much money for extra equipment. You can use a nice external mic instead of using a external audio recorder. Works relatively well, good enough to get started. And then here you've got the focus, autofocus switch. Not too bad, pretty standard. So that's about it for, well, let's do here's the lens release button down here. Yeah, and pull it out. And inside here, let's see the shutter itself. When it's closed down. Of course, the camera does not have any extras that a SLR would have. And then you've got the standard lens contacts, screwdriver autofocus, SDM power contacts, all standard Pentax stuff. So here's the sensor. It's actually running at the moment. That's the standard 16 megapixel sensor, slightly different than the K5 one. Nice, great photos from that so far. Why did I go with the K-01 instead of the K5? Or maybe the upcoming K30? I already have a K5. I'm looking for a second body. The K-01 is cheaper. It has better video modes than the K5. It's got the full manual control. It's just built in a way that it makes video easier. You've got the standard mirrorless setup, so with video it works better. It's always in live view mode. You don't have to switch. You've got it straight there, and of course it's got the extra button to do automatic video. However, like I said, that's only a program. I don't understand why they did that, but it's cheaper, video's better, it's smaller, uses the same batteries as the K5, K7. Those are the cameras that I use. I usually use two cameras at once, or I frequently use two cameras at once at conventions. I'll have the K-01 around my neck, and then the K5 with the shoulder strap. Each one will have a prime lens. Lately I've been using a 14mm or similar wide-angle lens on the K-01. K5 has like an 85 or 55mm lens, and that setup works quite well. The wide angle for video and pretty easy shots with the K-01, and then the K5 with the semi-telephoto, thin depth of field photos. That works very nicely. I could have done something similar with the K30, however it's not going to be released for a little while. It'll be more expensive. It does not have a mic port, which is an important feature for me personally. It does not have HDMI. However, as I mentioned before, oddly, the HDMI in this does not work in video out or live view out. Maybe they'll fix that, I don't know. But it doesn't have the video features that the K-01 has. And of course, that's just my opinion. So it's up to you. I think it's a great second body. It works very nicely for video. And very exceptional still quality, especially compared to the other mirrorless cameras out there. Maybe the Fuji X Pro 1 has got a leg up, maybe not. I don't know the specifics on that camera, but this has a good sensor. It's relatively low cost, full K mount, same battery as the K5 that I use. It works nicely, slightly smaller, easier to use in a pack with multiple cameras, lenses. The brick-like qualities of it are actually a positive in that sense.